David did include a screenshot to help illustrate, which is always helpful. I'm sure it makes it, emailing a screenshot in makes it easier for you guys to kind of visually explain what you're looking for. So this is a two-piece question here. The market direction, the market trend direction is going to be set by the swing trend indicator, right? So you can see the zigzag lines on here, right? The green and red lines. So that's the swing trend indicator. And you can see the text up there, right? So that's one of the free indicators that comes with our installer, right? And you can also see, it marks, it has nice text markings here to identify the points. Obviously, after the fact, obviously you never know where a swing point is going to be exactly. So this is not, it's amazing how many people think that there's indicators out there that can identify a high point and a low point on exactly that bar. But no, there is no such thing, right? Obviously, these points get locked in a few bars later, right? So just to make sure there. So we can see that, right, the point of the swing trend indicator is it's identifying these higher lows. That's a higher low. Well, yeah, okay, I don't see the left edge. So yeah, it's a higher low. But then we have a lower high and then a lower low, right? And then a lower high and a lower low, right? So the trend direction is going to be set by a lower low, then a lower high, right? So as long as we're getting a lower low and a lower high, that's going to set the trend direction. And then we can see here the entry points are when the SuperTrend M11. So this is the M11, not the U11, but the M11 indicator when it gets crossed right by the renko bars here. So and that's the what the entry trigger is, when price crosses it, right? So the point here of this is to filter out all of these crossover signals, right? We can see we got a long signal here when price crosses the super trend, when it's in a downtrend, right? So we got a long signal, and then we got the short signal, right? So we just get all these tons of these signals here. So the purpose of this question is, how do we filter these signals so that we only see the signals? For example, this one short signal should be the only signal on this part of the chart here, because we've established a lower low and a lower high, right? So this is a higher low. So let's see, this is a higher low. So maybe that long signal might be valid if that was a higher high previously, right? So to the left where we can't see, if that was a higher high and then a higher low, then that long signal would be valid. But this short signal would not be valid because we need a lower low first and then a lower high second, right? So again, this long signal should be filtered out. This short signal should be filtered out, and this long signal should be filtered out, right? Because this long signal occurred before the higher high, right? So we're going to use the swing trend indicator as a market direction filter to filter out, all of these crossover signals, and just leave the crossover signals, that line up with the swing trend market direction. All right, so that is what this question is about, and we can see I already have my chart set up to go. So I'm just using the Unirenko bar here, and I'm using the SuperTrend M11 from Lizard Trader, right? So you can download this indicator from Lizard Trader or Futures.io. It's up there somewhere on Futures.io as well. So you do need an account with either website in order to download the indicator. And I'm just using the default settings So the settings I were given don't make any don't make any sense. So I'm just defaulting to the default settings for the indicator here. All right, and then we can see the other indicator is the swing trend, right, which comes with the shark indicators installer there. So, all right, so let's open up BloodHound and get things started. So first thing we need to do is put a file name in here, so our work is saved to a file. So I'm going to hit the Save As button, and I'll take last week's file name and just update the date here. There we go. All right, we'll save that, and there we go. So now we have a file name for our work to be saved to. And next I'm going to switch over to the logic template here, and we'll make a new logic template, and let's give this a name. All right, so we're doing a SuperTrendM11. Actually, let's see, M11 crossover with the swing trend filter there. All right. Well, actually, yeah, I guess. So let's build the market direction filter first. All right. So we're gonna take a threshold solver, and with the threshold solver, we can read the swing trend indicator here. All right. All right. So let me load in the swing trend indicator. So we need to go to the shark indicators folder, and there's the swing trend. All right, we're just using the default settings, with the swing strength of 7, and the swing type set to standard there. So, all right, so now what we're looking for are the lower lows. So for a short, we want a short output when a lower low occurs, and we want a long output when a higher high occurs. Okay. So you can see, right, that the indicator does tell us when these points are locked in. Let's see, I'm just scanning through some of these other outputs. Right, you can also see here, right, there's the overall trend listed, the quick trend listed, and the breakout trend, right? So those trend outputs, they're basically in int series. So that the the Dorston swing trend solver was basically just a quicker, more convenient way to access these trend outputs here directly, without having to go through, setting up a threshold solver and everything. So, all right. So anyway, so getting back to what we're trying to do here. So we're trying to identify a lower low for, we want a short output, and the reverse would be identifying a higher high for a long output. All right. So next, we're going to leave the thresholds at 0, and we're going to set the outputs like that. And well, I'm getting a bit of a disconnect here. So let me just double check. Yeah, all right. That's correct. So I'm expecting these long outputs, not before the higher high is made, but after the higher high is made. So let me save and close that, and let me reload the chart here. See if that fixes things. There we go. Okay. Yeah. All right. So this will work. So, actually, yeah. Let me correct what I've said here. So, the higher, so we're getting an output once the indicator switches to a higher high label. So in order to really kind of understand what's going on here, it helps if you watch the indicator in real time. So you can see this label, right? Let me move it like this, right? So this label, right? So we definitely have a lower low moving here. And so as price keeps going lower, that label keeps moving, right? So this lower low was identified, you know, as soon as price crossed below the previous low point, then this lower low was identified. But of course, the indicator doesn't know when price is going to stop. So every bar below the previous low point gets marked with a lower low, right? It just keeps going down and down and down until price reverses and that low point gets locked in, right? So going back here, yeah, here we go. So going back here, and let's see, I'm not seeing any of the, low points here. Oh, okay. Sorry. I got that wrong. Okay, so I got the output wrong there. There we go. So, all right, like I said, it's been a while since I've used this. So, when a lower low occurs, the indicator is outputting a 1 for this. It's outputting a 1. So normally what indicators will do is when the indicator is identifying a downtrend, usually it'll output a -1. But this swing trend, since the lower low is separated from the higher high points, right? They're both outputting a +1. So this is a little different. So sometimes you just have to kind of experiment with your indicator that you're using, you know, to figure out, you know, what value is that indicator outputting. So, all right. So for the short output, we're using greater than A here because when the low point is identified, right, it's outputting a 1 there. So, and also, let's see here. Let me reload the chart again here. There we go. All right. So we can see, right, that this lower low is identified as soon as, let's see, what are we breaking below here? Oh, yeah, so we have to go below this double bottom. We have to go below that double bottom. And I think one thing that'll help, yeah, I think one thing that'll help is this double bottom, double top strength. I think if we knock it down to 1, let's see if we can knock it down to 0. Yeah, it looks like we can set it to 0 there. There. So, oh, all right. So it doesn't allow, okay. So the swing trend doesn't allow a 0 for the swing strength. All right. And, well, yeah, so it looks like that error is crashing BloodHound. So the swing trend indicator, since I was able to set a value in its parameters that's invalid, it's now crashing BloodHound. So something else I wanted to do here is I wanted to go into the swing trend on the chart and also set the double top, double bottom strength to 1. So, all right, and yeah. So the swing strength indicator running inside a BloodHound is going to be constantly throwing these error messages until we get that fixed there. So that's, one thing about Ninjas, right, is constantly reinitializing your indicators and constantly causing those errors to keep popping up until we can get this fixed. So I guess I'm just gonna have to start from scratch. I haven't gotten very far, so let's just start this over from scratch. All right, so let's remove that there. So let me hit the save as, click the file here, the file name that I already have, and then hit save. And then yes, I'm going to replace that file, save over it. There we go, with a new template. All right, so let's put all this back here. Let me grab another threshold solver. All right, so with this threshold solver, we're going to be identifying the higher highs and lower lows. So let's plug in the swing trend indicator. All right, there we go, swing trend. Okay, so we know now that double bottoms, double top strength is a minimum, set to a minimum of 1. And we're going to leave everything the same. So now we're trying to find the lower lows for a short output and the higher highs for a long output. And then we're going to set our long output like that and a short output like that. All right, and there we go. Now it does kind of magically, look like these higher highs are being, identified in real time. So let's save that. So if we reload the chart, now we can see what happens in real time, right? So let's kind of break this down here real quickly, right? So when does a higher high occur? Well, when the previous high point is broken, right? So this lower high, as soon as it's broken, right here on this bar, right, then what's developing is a higher high. So this higher high started developing, right? And that was the last bar of the higher high as price reversed. So, right. So that's what we're seeing here, which is fine. We don't need to, we don't need to see the signals exactly, on those points there. So, okay, so we've got the higher highs and lower lows identified. So next we want to identify the lower highs and the higher lows. So let's get BloodHound back open again. And what I can do is from the solvers tab, right, here's that threshold solver that I already made, right, that's identifying that's finding the higher highs and lower lows. And I can make a copy of this, and now I can identify, let's see, I want to identify higher lows for the long side, right? So a higher low for the long side, or for the short side, a lower high, right? So there we go. So for a long trend, I want to find a higher low, and for a short trend, I want a lower high, right? Just like, so we can see over here, right? So we have a lower low, and then what we want is a lower high to identify, to start a downtrend in the market, right? or to pick a downtrend. So, okay, so we've got this named correctly. So now let's go into the swing indicator and pick the correct plots here. So I want a higher low for a long, and I want a lower high for a short, right? Okay, so we got that picked. There. All right, so we have our second solver set up here. That's identifying, right, the second point, you know, to identify a trend direction. There. So, going back, switching over to the logic tab now. All right, we have our first solver on here. So now let's go to our solver nodes, existing nodes, and right there is that second threshold solver that we just made on the solvers tab. So we're going to click on that, put that on the board, and let's connect that in. And yeah, there we go, right? Higher low, lower high, higher low, lower high, right? So good to go, right? So we get a short output for this lower low, and then we want to match it up with a short output for this lower high, right? So how do we get, you know, these short signals from the lower low over to the lower high? Right? We need to extend these short signals over to the lower high. Right? When that occurs. So, and actually this lower high is actually detected way back here. So let's actually there, let me reload the chart, and let's see if we can get that. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so we can actually see that the as soon as this lower low gets locked in and the uptrend, right, the upswing, I should say, as long as the upswing, as soon as the upswing begins, right, obviously this upswing starts off at a lower high until it goes higher than the higher high, and then it'll switch from a lower high to a higher high, right? So as the market's moving up, you know, this upswing, right, it's developing as a lower high, right? And so we can see here, here's our first bar where it starts identifying, right, the lower high right there until it gets locked in. So what we're going to need are some toggle nodes. Yeah, I think we're going to need 2 toggle nodes. Put those in here. So, all right. So I'm reloading the chart again so that we can so we can see the correct data here. Here, yeah, so once again, right, this lower low starts as soon as this previous low point is broken. And then we go lower, so we're in a lower low, developing lower low. So, and yeah, so here, right, as soon as this higher high starts developing, right, the long gets captured when this higher high starts developing, and we can see that there's no lower low points here, so it stays in this long, you know, until the lower low starts developing there, right? And let's check out this toggle node here. And let's also reload the chart again. Yeah, there we go. So from this high point, actually from this low point, right? This lower high, as soon as the upswing is identified, right? This upswing stays. Let's see, this upswing stays in a lower high. Yeah, it stays in a lower high until it reverses. Now, one thing that looks kind of weird is, remember, this solver, let's open this up again. So remember, this solver here is only identifying higher lows and lower highs. All right. So when the market, when it starts moving up, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, well, here's our previous high point. So when it breaks that, isn't the swing trend changing from a lower high to a higher high? And yes, it is. But remember, this solver is not identifying higher highs, right? This solver is only looking at higher lows and lower highs, right? So what we want to do next is combine these two with an AND node. There. So let's see here. Actually, yeah, this is perfect. We got both here going on. So we have a lower low, and then we get a lower high, and as soon as that lower high is identified, right, it's developing as identified, then we get a short trend, right? So we had the lower low first, and then the higher low next, and then the short trend develops. And let's see here. Now, something that we're going to need to do is when this higher high starts developing, well, right, that should be pretty clear that should be the end of the short trend. So let's see, when does that occur? Right there. So this bar breaks above the previous high point, and this upswing turns from a lower high into a higher high. So a higher high starts developing on this bar. So that's when we also want this short trend to come to an end right there. So let's see, I think it's this toggle node here. Right. So this toggle node here, actually, let's name these toggle nodes. There we go. So we can name these toggle nodes to tell us what are these toggle nodes finding here. So this toggle node here, we want to turn this toggle node off when a higher high starts developing, right? Because that's the end of our short trend. So we can take this solver, and let's take a look at it. And, well, all right, we gotta reload here. There we go. All right, so our threshold solver that's identifying the higher highs, there we go. We can see, right, we get this long output on that bar that I marked. So we want this long output to turn this toggle node off, so we can connect this into the reset. And let's zoom in there, right? So we're going to use the reset connector to reset this toggle node. So let's see. So we have the higher low, lower high toggle node connected to the result. So we can see it's right. This toggle node has a short output, and our higher high, lower low solver, what's it generating? It's generating a long output, right? So that's opposite of what the toggle node is set to, right? The toggle node is set to short output right now. So in the toggle node, on the resets here, we're using an opposite signal, right? So we're using a long signal to kill or turn off the short output. So we're using the opposite signal, and we're going to use an opposite signal to force it off, right? And there we go. So now we can see this, right? This toggle node for the higher lows and lower highs is now turned off. And so now if we look at our AND node, there we go. So if we look at this AND node, there. Now let's kind of go through this a little bit here. Yeah, so if we go back here, right, we got a higher high, and then as soon as this higher low is identified, you know, bingo, we're in a long trend here, and this long trend remains until, right, until, let's see, right, you know, right there, right, until a lower low starts developing. So yeah, so we can see here I've got this circled. Right, so this lower low starts developing way back here, right, once the previous low point is broken. And so obviously this long trend is over with. There, it's over with. So we're basically in this non-trend directional state until the lower low finishes, and then we get this uptrend, which then starts a higher low. So, and then we're in a short trend. So there. So I think, yeah, I think that should do it for our trend direction there. I think that's all we need. You know, we could get even a little more technical with this trend direction, right? Because, you know, because what, you know, if we go back to the original question, right, we need a lower low and a lower high. But obviously the lower high, it's starting, but we don't know that this is going to end as a lower high, right? So should we say that this short trend is identified, you know, immediately as soon as this lower high starts developing? Or should we wait for the swing point to start reversing down and lock this in as a lower high, right? Because the market could have kept on going and turned from a lower high into a higher high, right? The market could have kept on going, and we would have had this short period, right, this small period of a short trend. And actually, let's see if we can, I'm sure we should be able to find that on here where we kind of get tricked. Well, actually, yeah, the market's not really working with me here. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, so we got a lower low and then a higher low. So yeah, we're in a short trend. But then we get a higher low and then a higher high. So we can see this long trend started developing too early because let's see, we needed a higher low to develop after the higher high. After a higher high, we need a higher low. So that actually, brings up a good point here. So the higher low is identified. Yeah, it's identified first, and then we get to the higher high. So what I'm trying to figure out, how can I make this toggle node, right, for the lower highs and higher lows to wait for the higher high to occur first, or the lower low to occur first, right? And it's a matter of resetting this toggle node another way. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure how to do that off the top of my head. All right. So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not sure if this really needs to be tightened up anymore. I think there's a good chance that what we have here will work just fine. So now that we have the trend, the market trend direction here. So let's add. Let's see, what should we call this? Actually, no, this AND node, we'll just leave it like it is. So we just need the second component, right, of this idea here, which is to find, right, the super trend crossing points right there, right? Whenever that super trend crosses, right, that's the actual trade signal triggering point, right? Is crossing the super trend. So let's add that to the mix, and then we can analyze the signals and see if this, trend filtering needs to be improved. So we're going to grab a crossover solver. Where is it? There it is, right there in the middle. Crossover is right there in the middle. Let's grab the crossover. Let's connect it into the result node. And we're looking for the closing price of the bar, right, to cross the SuperTrendM11. So it's going to be the close price, crossing over the SuperTrend M11. All right, so input A, that's going to be price, right? And that's going to be the closing price of the bar. And then input B will be the super trend indicator. So again, that's from Lizard Indicators or Lizard Trader. And we're going to scroll down to the S's. Let's see, there we go. So remember, there's a U11 and a M11. So we're using the M11 this time. All right, so there we go. And again, I'm just using the standard default indicator settings here. And the stop dot, right, is the plot that we see on there on the chart. It's the stop dot, so we're good to go. And here we go. So there we go. Price crosses above the super trend line, we get a long. Price crosses below the super trend, we get a short. So there we go. So we got all the, right, we got all these crossover points here marked using the crossover solver. So next, Connect that in and connect that in. And there we go. So let's take a look here. All right, yeah, I think we should have gotten a signal here. Let me just reload just in case. Huh? Yeah, we have a higher high and a higher low and no signal. So let's analyze this, see what's going on here. There, so I'm expecting a signal there. So it's definitely got to be something with, right? If we look at the crossover solver, you know, great. There's our short crossover. There's our long crossover. So it's definitely got to be something with our trend filtering mechanism here. So this toggle node, all right, it has a long output. So it must be the other toggle node. All right. Is the higher low and lower high toggle node. Yeah, let's, okay, so. Oh, here we go. Okay. So remember, previously I was wondering how I can require, right, the higher high and lower low swing points to occur first, you know, and then look for the higher low or the lower high second, right? So what I'm going to do, stretch this out here. I'm going to pull this back and I'm going to take a AND node. All right, it's going to get a little messy here. And take the toggle node into the AND node, right? And then connect our higher low and lower high solver into it. Let me see if that gives me what I want. Let's see, where was that signal? Oh, there it is. Yeah, so what I wanted to do is, right, so the reason why we didn't get a signal here is, remember, our toggle node, right, that's tracking the higher lows and lower highs, right? So when the swing trend switched to a lower high, remember, we're using lower highs to identify a possible downtrend. But problem is we didn't have a lower low previously. But that toggle node switched from going long to short because the lower highs, you know, are, you know, right? That's a part of the short trend component. And so the toggle node reverses into a short output, right? And so in order to prevent this short output, right, what I'm using is the all right, so this is our primary swing point, you know, the higher highs and the lower lows, I guess, are the primary points that need to occur first, and then the higher lows and lower highs is the secondary points, right, that need to follow afterwards, you know, to lock in a market direction. So I'm using the higher highs and lower lows from the toggle node as a filter to our solver that's, right, our solver that's finding the higher lows and lower highs. So instead of that going there, move that out. There we go. All right, so now let's take a look. There we go. All right, so hopefully that fixed a couple of things here. So yeah, so right here we got a double bottom, so it's not a higher low, but it's a double bottom. But I imagine that's probably okay because double bottoms are typically considered, right, reversal points, at least in the broader markets. So there, yeah, there's a long signal. There's a long signal. So we had a higher high, higher low, and then price crossing the super trend. All right, so let me close that out. Okay, so we looked at those. Let's go back here and look at some others. All right, yeah, so here we go. So we need to get rid of this signal here. Right, that short's incorrect because that's a higher low, not a lower low. So this one's correct. So we have a lower low, and then a lower high, and then we get our crossover. So let's see what's going on here. All right, so I already can tell what's going on here. So we have a lower low found here, and so this lower low turned the toggle node on, and I was kind of thinking this to myself. I was wondering, you know, but what I was wondering if these higher lows need to turn the toggle node off when this lower low is identified. You know, basically, if we don't get a higher high, you know, then what's going to turn this lower low signal off, right? If we don't get a higher high to turn it off, then what will? Well, we need these higher lows to turn off the lower low toggle node, right? So that would get rid of this signal. So this lower low would get turned off. Let's see. I think, yeah, actually, it looks like the logic's going to need to be a little more complicated because this higher low, right? Because if price kept going down and crossed, yeah, if price kept going down and it crossed the super trend, that would have been a valid signal, right? If it crossed right here. Yeah, because this higher low wouldn't have been locked in yet. So, all right. Yeah, so we do need to, we need to know when these higher lows get locked in, right? And when the higher low gets locked in, it's when the swing reverses up, right? So when the zigzag line starts drawing upward, right? That's when these higher lows get locked in. Yeah. So we need to look for this higher low, which is going to start immediately, right? As soon as this downswing starts developing, this higher low is identified. So it's probably identified like on this bar or this bar, one of these two bars here, right? And then the downswing is identified and begins, but we don't want that higher low to turn off that lower low, not yet, because what if the market kept going down and it crosses our super trend? That would have been a valid signal. So we need to wait for the downswing to reverse to an upswing, which locks in the higher low. All right, so how do we do that? That's going to be the question here. Yeah, so getting back to getting back to the point here, we need a way to reset this toggle node, right? The toggle node for the higher highs and lower lows when this higher low gets locked in. So I think I'm going to need another solver that identifies the swing trends, right? Identifies the upswings and the downswings. So let's go back to our solvers tab, and I will make a copy of one of the previous swing trend threshold solvers. And what I want is the swing direction. There. I want the swing direction, right? Which is what these zigzag lines are, right? I want to know what direction these zigzag lines are pointing. So, okay, so let's open up the swing trend indicator and figure out which of these plots or outputs do we want. And we want the swing direction. There we go. So we want the swing direction. Let's select that. There. And that swing direction, this time we're going to have to reverse the short output. So yeah, so this, let me go back here. So this swing direction, this is a single output. And so if the swing direction is positive, right, if it's upward, then this is going to equal a positive 1. And if the swing direction is downward, then it's going to equal a negative 1, right? So that's more typical, versus what I was talking about earlier with the other solvers. So we need to change the short output to that. So there we go. All right, so let's go back to the logic board here on the logic tab. Go to our solver nodes, existing nodes, and there's the swing direction threshold solver. And I think I'm going to need to put that there. Yeah. So let's connect that in here. Let's take a look at that solver. Right? And if you notice, right, there's always a delay. Again, price has to reverse direction a certain amount before you know that the market has truly, reversed direction. So this upswing right here, this upswing is identified on this bar, right? So it took 3 bars for the upswing to be identified. And then this downswing also took 3 bars here. So it just so happens that on this particular renko chart, it takes about 3 bars for the swing direction to reverse direction. And then that locks in the previous swing point. Right? Locks it in there. Okay, so getting back to identifying this higher low, and when it gets locked in, all right, so we're gonna have to reverse one of these solvers outputs, right? Well, actually, let's look at, right, so looking at our higher lows and lower highs, right? This lower high, okay, no, I'm going to change my mind here. So this higher low, right, is possibly a part of a long trend, right? So when we get a higher high combined with a higher low, then we've identified a long market direction. So we can see we get a long output when this higher low is developing. But then it stops, right, when the market reverses, right? So if the market keeps going up, right, then this higher low, you know, it stops here. So I'm going to have to use a signal extender to extend this, let's see, 1, 2, 3 bars, right? So whenever the swing direction occurs here, so 1, 2, 3, yeah, right? So on that bar, when we get the long output, that's when the upswing is identified. So we need to take the long output that stops on this bar and extend it forward 3 bars until the upswing, you know, gets identified. And then that is basically the higher low being locked in. So all right, so what do we need here? We're going to need some more. Yeah, we're going to need some more solvers. All right. So I'm going to need a signal extender. And with the signal extender, I need to extend for 3 bars. All right. So we need to go from the last high point forward 3 bars until the upswing is locked in. And so there. So let's take a look here. Yeah, there we go. All right, so if we look at the swing direction, let's zoom in here. All right, so looking at the swing direction, right? My arrow is on the bar when the upswing is identified, right? And then the upswing doesn't stop until this downswing, right, is identified a few bars later. So, but what we want is this signal extender, right? So we're taking, let's back up here, right? So we're taking our higher lows and lower highs. So we're taking this long output from the higher low and extending it forward using the signal extender. So there we go. We get the long output and extend it forward. So, all right. And now, let's see. So now I need an AND node. And so when both of these are long together, there we go, right? So there is our long signal telling us that that higher low was now locked in. And vice versa, yeah, so vice versa, you know, this lower high, right, was identified right there on that short signal for that lower high, right? So if this lower low had not occurred, right, so right now this lower low, when it was identified, it's going to reverse the higher high, right? So remember right, we have a toggle node here identifying the higher highs and lower lows, but of course we go from a higher high straight to a lower low. But let's say this was a higher low. So we have a higher high to higher low. But then when we go to a lower high, we could use this lower high signal to turn off the higher highs as well. So let's connect that into the reset of our toggle node for the higher high and lower low toggle node there. Okay, so let's connect that in. Right, so we're looking at the higher high and lower low toggle node. And of course, right, when the higher high is identified, that toggle node gives us a long output, right? A long output until the market goes far enough down where now this downswing has become a lower low, right? So we can see it goes, when this downswing goes below this prior low point, right, it becomes a lower low. All right, so getting back to our lower low. So here's our lower low, lower high, so we're still good. But then, right where the arrow is, that's where we want this lower low short output to end. We want it to end. So on our toggle node, I think we're using an opposite signal. Yep, there we go. So there we go. So that higher low gets locked in and it turns off the lower low, toggle node. But then again, we can see pretty quickly here, this downswing turns into a lower low again, right? We have another lower low and it became a lower low right here. So the lower low turns back on pretty quickly, which actually doesn't solve our problem. Yeah, so I think we also need to not identify these lower lows quite so early. Yeah, because this lower low was identified really early. Well, actually, let's see if that toggle node got turned off. No, it didn't. Okay. Yeah, so this signal is still here because the lower low toggle node turned right back on really quickly. So, all right. All right, so what I'm going to do is our solver, right, that's identifying the higher highs and lower lows, right, if we connect that in, right, this lower low point, right, it begins way back here, right, so this is where a lower low swing point is developing. But we need to wait until this lower low actually gets locked in by the swing direction reversing upward. So we have a swing direction solver here. Yeah, so let me take my arrow and mark the bar. So that's the bar where the upswing is identified, right? So again, that's our solver here that's plotting the swing direction. So I'm going to need to take our higher high and lower low and do the same thing, basically what we did right here, is I need a signal extender and combine it with our swing direction. All right, so let me grab a signal extender. Here we go. All right, so there we can see we have our lower low stops, but then we extend the signal forward for 3 bars, right, until the upswing is locked in and identified there. Okay, so and then next we need to combine that. All right, let me move some of this stuff out of the way. So now we need to combine that with the swing direction solver. But when we look at this, right, well, the upswing is giving us a long output, right? That's in the opposite direction. So we need to reverse that. So we can use the long short modifier. And we'll use the swap mode. There. And with a AND node, there. So if we look at this, we actually, what we just created now are discrete signals when the lower low point is locked in, or when a higher high point is locked in. Right, so we made basically a slightly more constrained or a more accurate identification of these higher high points or lower low points. Right, so we're identifying them once they're locked in, so afterwards. So we'll take these signals and then feed it into the toggle node. So now we're not turning that toggle node on too soon, right? So we're waiting for the higher highs and lower lows to get locked in before turning the toggle node on. All right, so that should generate some more accurate signals here. And I should name this AND node. Let's see, what is this AND node again? It is the lower high and higher low. Yeah, there. So yeah, so it's the higher lows and lower highs locked in. There. All right, there we go. So we have our AND nodes labeled there. So now let's connect up our signals and see what we get. All right, so that signal that used to be there is now gone. And let's see, lower low, lower high, crossover, that signal's good. And let's see if these previous signals are still here. So yeah, higher high, double bottom, signal, higher high, higher low, signal. All right, good, 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 good. So let me keep scrolling back here and let's check these other signals. Yep, so higher high, lower low, crossover. Let's see, lower low, lower high, crossover. So far so good. Lower low, lower high, crossover. Yep, lower low, lower high, crossover. And let's get rid of that. So let's see, lower low, lower high, crossover. And let's see, the super trend did not reverse directions there, so all right, yeah. Let's see, all right, so we get a higher high, a little higher low, and a crossing of the super trend. All right, I think, yeah, it looks good now. I think this is nice and cleaned up. All right, so to kind of summarize, you know, this market trend direction, that we built is, right, we're using threshold solvers, you know, to identify these swing points here, and then putting them into a toggle node, right, and waiting for the higher highs or lower lows in combination with the higher, I'm sorry, we're waiting for the higher highs and lower lows, or let's just pick one of these. So for the toggle node, we're waiting for a higher high to be locked into the toggle node, and then a higher low also to be locked into the toggle node, right? And both together with an AND node, you know, means that we've identified a long market direction. And then we're waiting for, right, the super trend crossover of price to occur, right? So that is what we built there. Let's see here. All right, so David is asking, what settings do I have for the renko bars? Let's see here. Let me open up the data series. So there you go. I got 2, 5, and 10. David got the answer he's looking for. So good. All right. I think we're done with this topic then.